friends, and welcome to What the Fringe, the podcast dedicated to all things Fringe theater. I'm your host, Lauren Hance. Each week, I visit with a Fringe artist to hear all about their endeavors and gain insight into their process. This week, I'm visiting with Anne Zander of Mother, a postpartum comedy. Enter the afterbirth at Mother, a raw and primal and side-splittingly funny postpartum comedy for anyone who has ever given birth, or been given birth to. Called poignant, sexy, genius, and hysterical by audiences from New York to LA and Denver to Vegas, this outrageous, wet, and messy postpartum comedy is darkly hilarious, yet undeniably familiar to anyone who has ever given birth. Only an artist as completely ridiculous and completely vulnerable as Anne Zander could lay out postpartum in its unbearable rawness and make you laugh until you pee a little. Or a lot. Hey, look, no pelvic floor judgment here.
And the thing that I really took from the devising process in the ensemble setting that I was able to apply to the solo was that you definitely do not need to know the shape of the thing before you start it. You can have an overarching theme or an idea or an image or a concept and like jump off from there. And for me, I work in like these little bite-sized pieces. You know, I'll have one idea here, one idea there. And sometimes it's more of like a fleshed out, like this is almost like a sketch, but this might just be like a position of my body. And this might be like a sound that I made once, or this, you know, or like a line of text. And like all of these things are just kind of like ideas.
Anne Zander is a Portland-based master of physical comedy, a real-life mother of twins, and a clown on a mission to bring people out of the dark corners of isolation into the cathartic light of shared laughter. A queer, neurodivergent parent, actor, clown, and solo character creator, she is profoundly influenced by her training in ensemble-based physical devised theater at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. Zander's deep interest in rites of passage has led to solo works that capture the body horror, desire, repulsion, and tender recognizability of these irreversible life transitions. Through the pure emotions of the clown, imaginative makeup, and larger-than-life props, Zander creates worlds that are both more absurd and truer than reality itself, building tension past what feels possible and shining laughter into dark corners of human existence. My beautiful friend Anne Zander, welcome to What the Fringe.
Thank you. I've unmuted myself.
Oh man, I am like so excited to have you on the program today.
Me too.
So we met last year at the Edmonton Fringe, and just really like, you know, you meet Fringers and you have your friends, and then you have like your friends, and you were just like a little kindred spirit, and we just both kind of fell enamored with one another and got to see your show. I absolutely love it. Like sometimes I have people on where I haven't seen their shows, or I have, and this one I have, and I love it. So I'm very excited to talk to you some more professionally and talk about your shows.
Yeah, thank you. Mutual, I'm sure. That was my first time at Edmonton and my first time on like the Canadian Fringe circuit. So I definitely felt like a new kid. Like there were some clicks and I was like, oh, where do I belong? But you know, I kind of found my people throughout the run of the Fringe, and you were definitely one of them. And I think particularly being a parent and a mom, like who was fringing, was like, that's rare. It's rare to meet other moms on the Fringe circuit. You see a lot of dads.
You don't see a lot of dads, not as many moms.
Yeah, you see a lot of dads, not as many moms. I wonder what that's about.
Let's have a whole nother podcast about that.
But and no shade to those dads. Glad those dads are out there performing. But yeah, it feels like a little bit of new territory, and like for me specifically, touring a show about being a parent and about postpartum and having pretty young kids. My kids just turned 4. I have twins, and they were 3 last year when I was in Edmonton, and they were 3 for most of the time I was touring last year. But that was hard.
Yeah.
That was hard to be away from them and to kind of navigate that. And it just feels like a pretty unusual experience. So like, I know your kids are a little older, but it still was very meaningful to connect to another touring artist and a much more experienced touring artist than me who had kids, and to feel like, okay, this is possible and even hopefully going to get maybe a little bit easier over time.
Yeah, I mean, and I would think that you're going to agree with this next statement, whether you're a mom or a dad or any kind of parent that you are, the like touring aspect of Fringe or really anything is so dependent on having an incredible partner.
Yeah, and I would say like a partner, absolutely. And or also just like a support system. Like you need a support system beyond that partner too, because it's a huge burden. Edmonton was my longest trip away from home. I think I was away for 2 weeks. I'm about to go to Orlando, which is going to be just over 2 weeks. Usually when I'm going to a festival, they're shorter. They're sort of like, I'm just going for a long weekend, so it's not as long from home. But yeah, I absolutely wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have an amazing partner. And I'm lucky that my mom lives nearby and helps. And we have some other, friends and childcare providers to help out. Plus my kids are in preschool now, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, like, and when you said that, like, about the community as well, like, I was forgetting, I was like, oh yeah, we have this whole community, because my kids are a little bit older, so they're in now middle school and high school, that drive people everywhere because I don't have drivers yet. And I love, like, especially in both of my kids' groups, there are quite a few family units where both mom and dad are like integrally involved. And like I text both mom and dad, and people are learning that's the case with us as well.
Right. Not just a text to mom, you mean?
Not just text to mom. And so, yeah, like you're checking with both of the parents because everybody's really involved. And my husband couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, getting everybody where they need to go without just like even our little village here, and definitely grandparents and all of that as well.
Well, that's actually, I mean, we already talked before we started recording about how many different tangents we're going to go down. So
right, here's number 3. We're 10 minutes in.
I could go down this tangent too, which is that like my kids did just start in public preschool, when they were 3, they started in September, and that has opened up our community and our village and like meeting other parents in our neighborhood and their age. And it's like, we're starting to set up those kind of childcare share, and to kind of circle to one of the themes of my show. One of the hardest things for me about postpartum was how incredibly isolated I felt. And it makes a night and day difference to feel like you have people who are showing up and just kind of doing the things without even really having to be asked, or like you set something up and then it just kind of works, but having the village has taken a long time, and it's still growing, and hopefully will continue to grow.
Well, yeah, especially as your kiddos get older and you start, meeting all those different people.
Getting out into the world a little bit more, yeah.
So good. Well, we could have a whole podcast talking about all of that. But let's talk real quick just about you, my dear lovely friend. Let's talk about you as an artist. So you're a clown.
Yes.
So we don't have a lot of clowns in Houston. So I always tell people, like, I know all these, I know a bunch of clowns. And everybody kind of looks at me funny. And I'm like, no.
Like honk honk.
Yeah. Well, in Houston, we have the Houston Rodeo, which has rodeo clowns. And they're very much red-nosed, but they're out, like, they help with the rodeo to steer the animals away.
They're more like circus clowns.
But they, like, have really specific jobs. They're in barrels, like, especially if there's, like, an animal, like like a bronco or whatever, and the rider's fallen off. Like, their job is to divert the animal to protect the rider. But they're, like, rodeo clowns. Anyway, it's very cute. But you're a clown.
Yeah.
And so,
Uh-oh.
How did you get into clowning? Like, what made you want to say,
this is me?
I want to make people laugh.
Oh yeah, make people laugh. I think make people laugh is like a separate question from clowning for me.
True. Absolutely.
And it's even like, also just very briefly, like clowning has all these different subsets, and like most people are familiar with like a rodeo clown, a circus clown, a party clown, which are all very legitimate types of clowns. And I come from like a theatrical clowning tradition. They basically all come from Commedia dell'arte, which is like a 15th, 16th century, don't quote me on the century, Italian troupe that had, made of archetypes. And some of those archetypes were Zanni and like the Arlecchino. Like they were these characters that later kind of became Punch and Judy puppets and stuff. But anyway, it all comes from the same lineage, but it's sort of like split off into different styles over time. I come from like an improv and theater background. I had a really incredible high school theater teacher who had been a professional actress, for many years in touring companies and in repertory houses in different places in the country. And she introduced us to so many different things. She literally introduced us to Commedia dell'arte, had a mask maker come in and do a workshop with us, and improv. Like I was doing short form improv in high school, long form in college. So I always kind of had that running underneath. And then in college, I studied theater, had a little bit more exposure to some like experimental theater making, and like, I don't know if I knew that it was called like devised or ensemble based, but things that were sort of devised and ensemble based theater. And I ended up doing more of that after college. And then it was in my graduate program, which was 8 or 9 years after I finished my undergrad. I did this master's program called Theater Lab, and it was the overarching theme in my bio, as you read, was sort of devised ensemble physical theater, but we learned a lot of different practices. Each term we'd have like several different classes going where we're learning different practices like Grotowski, Meyerhold, Suzuki. And one of those units was Commedia dell'arte and clown. And so that was my introduction to clown, was working with this incredible teacher named Pita Lilly. She's absolutely worth looking up and checking out her offerings. If you're in London, she teaches locally, but she also teaches some Zoom classes, and she's fantastic. But I was so bad at it. It's so humbling because it requires such a surrender of perfectionism, and you have to be so present, and you have to like let go of your ego and let go of perfectionism. And I was so bad at those things, and I wanted to be good because I could see other people doing it who were like a little bit more natural at it. And I was like, and I also had some moments where I was like, oh, I'm doing it. But it's kind of like meditation, where you're like trying to meditate and you're trying to meditate. And then suddenly you're meditating and you're like, oh, I'm meditating. And then as soon as you go, oh, I'm meditating, you're not really meditating anymore. And that's sort of like clown. It's a good analogy because it is really all about presence, like being present in your own body, being present with the audience and tuned to everything that's happening. I think I became like a little bit obsessed. So, I finished that term with her, went on, finished my studies. And then after I graduated, she would teach these weekend intensives. And every time she would teach, I'd like take her class. And then I started doing more solo character work. So I'd come from this improv background, but I had a lot of friends. I was living in London who had done Edinburgh shows, like taken solo character shows to Edinburgh. So I'd like seen this kind of model of like developing solo work. But for me, the thing that clicked was like once I started to like allow all of my characters to be clowns and to like kind of really blend those worlds, which for me meant like there's no barrier between the audience and the performer, that's the main thing. But also there's just like this connect, like you respond to anything that's happening in the room. You don't ignore things that are happening. You follow things that might come up that might not have been planned, like you have a plan, but you're willing to kind of throw it away if something more interesting comes up, which also is useful to have kind of an improv background for that kind of stuff. And I really ate it for a while when I was trying to figure that out too, like it's a very humbling process when I was trying to figure out this character stuff and like trying things out bits in front of audiences. Like sometimes people would come up to me afterwards and be like, oh, that was really brave. And I'm like, oh no, it was supposed to be funny.
You got the brave comment.
Well, people still say that to me about this show.
In a different way, yeah.
It is in a little bit of a different way, but I'm always curious kind of exactly what people mean. But yeah, it became kind of an obsession. It definitely unlocked something in me. I'd always enjoyed improv, but I also 70 to 80% of the time, I would just find myself in my head when I was doing improv. And I did it for so long. I did it for like, well over a decade. And I just never kind of got out of that space where I was like in my head. And something about clown, I think for me, it was like removing a lot of text, like removing a lot of language from what I was doing and like going really into my body. It was so different. I felt so free and so able to improvise text from that place, as opposed to from like trying to remember what happened in the last scene and like what, how to call something back. And like, there are people who do improv the way that I do clown, and I admire those people, but like, I could never quite drop into it in improv, and like clown just kind of unlocked that for me.
I love all of that. I'm so sad we don't have a lot of clown classes here in Houston.
Well, I'm working on some virtual offerings.
Okay, well, then sign me up. Yeah, thanks for sharing that journey. Well, and how do you find, because you did a lot of devised work, like as ensemble when you're studying, and now you're doing solo work. So like, talk to me about the difference of that.
Yeah, really different. So I have one other full-length solo show that I created before Mother called Juicebox, which is like an adolescence coming of age clown story. And that show took me about 5 years to create, not continuous, like just kind of dipping in, dipping out. That show taught me my process. It turns out my process is just like trying things out in front of an audience a lot, figuring out what works, figuring out what doesn't work. But not just that, it's like I'm a very like visual person. I use note cards on the wall or on the floor, just like spread out. And the thing that I really took from the devising process in the ensemble setting that I was able to apply to the solo was that you definitely do not need to know the shape of the thing before you start it. You can have an overarching theme or an idea or an image or a concept and like jump off from there. And for me, I work in like these little bite-sized pieces. You know, I'll have one idea here, one idea there. And sometimes it's more of like a fleshed out, like this is almost like a sketch, but this might just be like a position of my body. And this might be like a sound that I made once, or this, you know, or like a line of text. And like all of these things are just kind of like ideas. And then there's a combination of me playing by myself in my room, which is like its own weird thing. I sometimes record myself, but I'm usually just playing. Sometimes I use a studio space with a mirror, but like a lot of times I'm just by myself and I can just feel or find what's funny through just kind of that process or what I think is funny. And then usually I'll come up with something that can be like a 5 or a 10 or a 15 or 20-minute bit. And then I try that out in front of audience to try and see what works, what doesn't work. And then through that whole process, I start to see how pieces might fit together. The shape emerges for me in my process. And that was definitely the process with ensemble. With ensemble, you had a lot more people giving ideas, which is great. But for me, like the audience writes a lot of my material, you know, like not just like what they like and what they don't like, but sometimes they'll just like react in a certain way. Like they'll say something to me, and then that becomes a part of the show. Like then the next time I say it, kind of like, I know what you're thinking, or like there's these little gifts that happen anytime I do something in front of an audience. And oftentimes those things just become a part of the show.
Yeah. I've seen that in Mother, where an audience says something and you repeat it, and then you repeat it again. And I mean, as the clown does, what kind of reaction did it get? How did that go? And it was really fun to watch that and watch you work in that way. Some of it was words, some of it was a body reaction or a face, you know. And yeah, it was really cool to see you be that present with like how you responded and incorporated that into the show.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately we all just want to be seen, right? Even though it's kind of scary, I think for an audience sometimes, or they think it might be scary to be like, oh, the performer can see me. I think it's a gift. I try to be present and vulnerable as an invitation to you to be present and vulnerable.
Yeah. I love it. Love it. Well, let's talk a little bit about Fringe, because I feel like you and I were in some ways in the same boat of those initial challenges that you have when you first start Fringe and you get to a new city. You don't have like an established posse or audience base. There's a lot of people who return year after year to Fringes, and they have that audience base. It's a lot easier to promote your show and get butts and seats and all of that. And I felt like you and I had some challenges, and I wanted to talk to you about that and see, like, let's talk challenges and successes of promoting a new show in a new city.
So Edmonton is the longest Fringe I've done, and it was such a learning curve for me on so many levels. There was the promotion side of it, but there was also the show itself. I had mostly done in short run Fringes or in short runs in a theatrical setting where people are like, I want to see your show. I'm coming to see your show on purpose, you know? And I found it was so different doing it in a Fringe where everybody is tired.
The audiences are like, am I going to stay awake or sleep in this show?
And I felt that too. Like, I felt that as a performer. I felt that as an audience member. And I was like, oh, I have to retool the show. Not in a way where I was changing it, but I had to be so conscious of my energy and how I was using it and what energy I was bringing specifically to the beginning of my show. Because I do have these bits that are like a little bit more durational. And I was like, I have to earn these because this audience has already maybe seen like 3 or 4 shows before this today. And they're like, I need to get their attention and keep their attention so that when I get to this part where I pump breast milk into a microphone for 5 minutes.
Which is absolutely amazing.
They're with me.
Yeah, because you start the show like carrying a bucket of water, which is, I'm not going to go into the details of it because it was brilliant, but it's like, how long can you do that for?
Yeah. So like all of these things, like even how I did the show, like throughout the course of the run changed a little bit. So that was like one part of the learning curve, was just like how different it was doing the show in a Fringe environment of that size versus like a small local Fringe where everybody's just kind of out for the weekend. And then, yeah, the promotional side of it, I did a lot of going out in like costume character and interacting with people, which was fun. And like, I super enjoyed for like the first few days. And then I just kind of like burnt out. And we're talking about this a little bit earlier, but I think pacing yourself is also really tricky. And just knowing that like, ultimately there's some things you can do, but I think there's like a point at which you have to just be like, I've done what I can do. At least for me, that was my experience, you know? And like, it's more important that I get some rest right now so that I can show up for my audience. Yeah, it was definitely challenging. And like, I was such a kind of newbie to the whole thing that I didn't even realize that like people literally come back with the same show year after year. And like, that is a way to build an audience. I was like, oh, this is durational. Like the festival itself is durational, but like building an audience is like this whole durational thing too. They put me in the biggest theater, which I guess was a compliment, but it was a lot of space to hold for a solo show. That's a pretty intimate solo show. It was a 300 seat.
So it's their biggest space. It's huge. It's like, it's deep. It's really deep.
Yeah, it's cavernous. It has like, it's proscenium and it's just like one big section of like raked seats going up to the back. And I was selling like, for most of my shows, like 50 to 80 seats, which in like a 80 seater would have been fantastic. And I would like kind of pack people to the front, but like holding the energy of that room was really challenging because it's so much like space. So yeah, there's all kinds of little challenges in that.
Right. And I thought you did that well, but I sat like on the third row when I saw it. So
well, I would also like really interact with the audience before the show. So I'd be like, you probably want to sit closer.
Yeah. You're like, move up.
It'd be better if you sit down here. You're probably going to miss half the show
if you go way back there.
Yeah. But there are parts where I also run into the audience. So if people were sitting way in the back, I'd be like, I'm coming for you. You can't escape me.
Like that was a bad choice you made, was to sit in the back. You thought you were safe back there. You're not in this clown show.
I think there was also like, I think as a clown, I'm like, I do want to try to like involve everybody just with my eyes, with my gaze. But I think I've also, playing larger spaces, I have like accepted a little bit more that like people do self-select a little bit, and it's okay to mostly interact with the people who are like, especially in a large space like that, who are in the front. And like, don't forget about the people in the back, but like, it's pretty exhausting for me to try to have to like energetically pull in people who have chosen to sit towards the back of a theater where there were spaces towards the front. And like, I don't know if that actually is worth my energy. Maybe they really just want to be kind of observers, and that's okay.
Yeah. It's everybody's having their experience that they want to have. And as someone as well that has a very interactive show, I try to be very cognizant of where people have placed themselves, because I don't want them to feel uncomfortable or like I'm going to call them out or make them do something that they don't want to do. I even had a reviewer who, you know, it was a very kind review and she really liked the show, but in her review, she's like, these kinds of shows like make me so nervous. It's not my jam. And if I recall, I don't think she participated, but she really loved the show. And I love that people can come see a participatory show like yours or mine and sit in the back and really enjoy the experience without having to be looked in the eye or asked to eat anything.
I don't make anybody eat anything.
You eat it.
I eat the things.
That's right. People have to hold it.
Somebody has to hold it.
Which is really just cake. But yeah, that people can have that experience. It's really beautiful.
For sure. And I don't want to give people the wrong idea either, because I am very tuned to people. And like, I would never force somebody to try to participate. And I move on very quickly if somebody is not comfortable for any reason. I think I just, for a long time, especially just playing smaller spaces, I was like, well, I can get everybody on board. You know, maybe that's just not my job.
I know. Well, and I don't want to scare anybody from seeing your show. It's so great. Because I think the one that I was in, you went to hand something to somebody and they were kind of like, and you were like, okay. And you moved on. Like, it was not a thing and it was okay.
Exactly. That's it. It's like there's always going to be somebody who's game.
There's always another option.
We just move on. And there's always an empty chair. If nobody takes it, like...
You're going to put it way at the back of the theater.
Yeah. I do think that from what audiences have told me, it does feel like an invitation. And like most people are very delighted to be able to play in that way and feel kind of included and invited.
It's a really, really fun show. And I think it's great. Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Mother. We've talked a little bit about some of the things that happen, and I don't want to give too much away.
I don't either. And I've also had people, like audiences, be like, you should go to the show without knowing very much about it. When I have people do testimonials, like, I get really great testimonials, but they're also just like, I came without knowing much, and like, that is the best way to see the show.
See, that's great. I was going to say, give us a little peek into the show. Like, what do you think, what's like something you would want people to know? And then, so that they can have the surprise and delight of experiencing the show all together.
So I think what I want people to know is that if you have ever given birth, I think you'll feel seen, and you get to laugh at shit that probably made you cry, and maybe cry, but at least you get to cry with other people and not alone, which I think is very healing. And if you haven't given birth, it's, again, from audience feedback, it's like a very fun, funny show. And it's also like viscerally the closest you will get to having the experience, because it is like a visceral transmission of what's happening. It's putting you in that, in that scenario. So it's kind of like it's a journey through the looking glass if you haven't given birth or will never give birth.
But like in a really fun way. It's not stressful. It's very fun. It's very fun to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there are moments in Clown and in the show that are a little bit stressful, that are like high tension or high stakes. But that's also because that's how postpartum is.
Right.
But then we build the tension and then we break it with laughter. That's the difference. Like we build the tension, we break it with laughter. We don't just build the tension and then sit in a room by ourselves and cry. And that's the healing part for me, is that I got to take things that were really like hard and isolating and bring them into an experience that is very community-based and very shared, and get to laugh and get to delight in things that felt hard.
Right. You're like a very emotionally intelligent person. So like, I kind of am curious, when you were devising this show and putting it together, playing in your room by yourself, what happened?
Oh, what happened when I was making it?
Yeah. Like, were you bawling in a ball on the floor, crying, or?
No. So I told you my first show took me 5 years to make. This show took me like 3 months to make. I have twins. They were born premature. One of them was 3 weeks in the NICU. The other one was 4 weeks in the NICU. And then I became the de facto stay-at-home parent, which was the plan, but also like I didn't really understand what that would mean. My husband had some time off of work, but not a lot of time off of work. And for the first year, we basically had no childcare. So it was just me, and like my mom really wanted to help out. Because my mom listens to this, I just want to say my mom has helped out a lot since they've gotten older. But it was, she was an older mom. I'm an older mom. Like she couldn't look after two newborns. At once at that stage. By the way, when I say postpartum comedy, it doesn't necessarily mean a postpartum depression comedy. It means like postpartum being like the period
after you give birth.
Yeah, 1 year to 5 years after you give birth. But like certainly that like the first year is so intense, and for me was so intense. And when they were 1 year old, we figured out how to get a nanny 1 day a week for like 6 hours. It was like like a 6 hour day, 1 day a week. And I just suddenly like had a little bit of time back, a little bit of myself back. And all leading up to this, I had been working a little bit, like I'd been teaching a little bit, but only if people were asking me. I didn't have the capacity to set anything up for myself at that point. But I started teaching again. I started a private teaching business, which I hadn't done previously. I'd only like taught out of other places. And that really quickly started going really well. I started developing the show. I had thought, so my first show was scheduled to tour in 2020, and then mostly got canceled because of the pandemic. And so I had always thought like, oh, well, whenever I'm ready to tour again, I will just take that show out because it's ready. But I was like, I have to make a different show about what's happening to me right now. Making Mother it like birthed the show. Like it kind of gestated very quickly and came out of me. And like, it was mostly a very joyful process because I finally had time to work through it. And like all the ideas were coming like fast and furious. And I was trying out bits a little bit in front of audience, but when I did my first work in progress, I didn't know how long the show was going to be. I had only tried out some of it in front of an audience. It ended up running like 70 minutes, but it was very, like, people loved it. And it was raw. It was so raw because I was literally still breastfeeding, and I pumped like 4 ounces of milk on stage. Because I do the pumping bit now, but like I don't breastfeed anymore, and still a little bit of milk comes out. It's quite amazing. But yeah, I literally pumped. I would have pumped more, but one of them was like misaligned. So like one boob didn't pump at all, and then the other like filled like 4 ounces. I just was so in it. Like I honestly think all that period made me a better clown too. Like when I got on, I remember being on stage that night, I was like, oh, I'm good at this. I dropped it. The next time I like reworked the show a little bit. That was just like a one-off work in progress. I did a full run of it like right around the time my kids turned 2. So it was like, but there was a chunk of time in between. But the process was really, I don't fully remember it, but I know it was kind of quick and feverish and just like, this has to come out some way. I don't know what else to do with this. This is a skill I have. This is a gift I have. This is an artistry I have. And I have to like take everything I've just experienced, which I feel still isn't understood, still isn't talked about the way it should be, and like turn it into this show, into this experience.
I'm so glad that like it was a beautiful and like happy experience for you, and that you weren't sitting in your room alone crying.
No, and I was actually mostly in the studio. There's a great studio space in town that's like pretty affordable, and I was mostly working in the studio, so I felt like I was just like in a different space, like getting out of the house. I had to get out of the house because the nanny was at our house. So like I was like, I had to get out.
You couldn't be upstairs being like, baby. Like she's like, what is going on? We've Wuthering Heights here.
My nanny would have been totally cool with it, but I needed my kids to be out of earshot of me and me of them. Like I needed to not have them be able to call for me.
Right.
Which is sometimes still the case when I need to work. I'm like, I have to focus, and like, they're fine if I'm not here. But if they know I'm here and they can get to me, then it's hard. But I think having kids has made me a better performer. It's made me like just cut a lot of the bullshit, just worry and anxiety. And it's like, I don't have time. I know I lived through a very traumatic childbirth experience. I lived through having my kids in the NICU. I can bomb in front of an audience. Like,
right. You're like, I mean, there's a lot of worse things that could happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are a lot of worse things that could happen. And as it turns out, I'm mostly not bombing at this stage. Like I did a lot of bombing early on. I'm mostly not bombing. But like I welcome a bomb at this point because like, yeah, it's not going to kill me. I've been through worse.
Yep. Oh man. Right. That's so true. That's so true. Well, I am watching our time, so make sure, but we will get to our last question, which is, what is your most interesting, awkward, or maybe tender heart moment that you've had at a Fringe? Fun story to end us with.
I'll share one from Edmonton because I shared some challenges there. There's a part in the show where I call a couple people up on the stage to help me by invitation. Nobody's forced. And it's a fun bit. And I called on this kind of younger looking person, and he was like, huh? Me? And then he was like, okay. And he participated, and we did the bit, we did the show, he came up, and then he and this older gentleman he was with, who turned out, it was his big brother, capital B, like the Big Brother organization, not like his biological big brother, but his big brother had brought him to the show. And I think this guy was like 17. And he was like, that was so cool. He was like, I've never been on stage before, and it was so cool to be on stage. And like, it was like really tender. And like, I later ran into the big brother, quote unquote, who told me that kid had been going through like a really hard time and that it was so meaningful. And I was like, I felt pretty sure that this show would be meaningful to people who had given birth. But it was really special to have it be impactful to a 17-year-old boy. And just like to whatever, again, like I could bomb, people can walk out of my show, things can happen. But like, I know that the people it's supposed to reach, it reaches, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That is just a stunning, beautiful story of the power of theater, the power of vulnerability, the power of truth, the power of kindness, of your generosity of giving, of him to receive. It makes all of our hard trials like so worth it. When they're probably, you know, that person sitting in the back probably has like a similar experience, but we don't get to know because they don't tell us.
Or people who are like kind of like stone faced the whole time, and afterwards they're like, I loved it. I'm like, oh,
Could have fooled me.
yeah, tell your face.
Yeah, what are you talking about? So glad. It's great. You were giving me a hard time.
Yeah, I had a lot of Edmonton audience who was just like laughing into their hands. It's very helpful to me when you laugh with your whole mouth. Kind of feeds the energy of the show.
Be able to see through their hands.
Yes, yes.
Oh, man. Anne, thank you so much for coming on What the Fringe today. It has been so much fun to have you here.
Totally my pleasure. And stay tuned for parts 2, 3 through 75.
562 on Patreon. Before we leave, though, for our visual viewers on YouTube, just stand up and show us your shirt.
Yeah, so this is my show image. So we got the mesh underwear. Hold on, can I get all the way down to there's a little pad down here.
Oh, yeah, the pad.
You can't see it, but yeah, and then the pumps. The high-tech in-bra pumps. Yeah, if you're in Orlando, you might see me around in this. This is my promo shirt, so.
It's so good. Because you're like kind of wearing it. We can kind of see it. So I was like, we got to get like the full.
It just sort of looks like I'm wearing like a weird white necklace and I'm casually topless under this.
And there's like a few little fingers.
Yeah, who are these fingers?
What is that? It's your fingers.
It is. It's mine.
Well, Mother is playing at the Orlando Fringe this May. And you can learn more about Anne and snag those tickets. The best place is her Linktree, which is Anne Zander. We'll link that in the show notes. You can also visit her website, annezander.com. And if you're a doula, a midwife, lactation consultant, or a new parent, like reach out to Anne so that you guys can explore some collaborations, because this show would be wonderful to collaborate with those types of folks to start discussions and get people to feel a little bit lighter about the process. You can keep up with Anne on Instagram at clown.mother and at _mother.show_. It's going to be linked because you got to get all those underscores.
I did too. It just felt better to be symmetrical for some reason. Hit me up if you have at mother.show because I want it.
Yeah, if you're that defunct account, let's hand it over. You can also find her on Facebook at clown.mother. What the Fringe is produced and hosted by me, Lauren Hance. This episode was edited by Ben Ellis of Renowned Media, and those sweet tunes you hear are provided by Paul Snyder of Orchestra of Sound, and our logo was designed by Ruby Arnold of Ruby Makes Things. What the Fringe can be found on your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know when new episodes release. Keep up with What the Fringe on Instagram at whatthefringe_productions, and find us online at whatthefringeproductions.com. I talk about flyering a lot in the podcast because it is literally the bane of my existence. I hate it. I hate it so much, but it's just part of the deal, you know? So you kind of have to find people, hunt them down, and take this approach.
I'm coming for you. You can't escape me.